This is Joe Pryor, the virtual real estate team in Oklahoma City, and I want to talk in the second part about some of the basic rules of a 1031. But let me just say off the bat that the IRS doesn't like tax deferment. I think we can all agree on that, and pretty generally speaking. And so they want you to follow some pretty strict rules in terms of how you proceed on a 1031. And believe me, there is no wiggle room on this. It is exact. So the first rule is once that subject property closes, and let's say that's the first of a month, you've got 45 days to identify the properties that you want to exchange into without paying tax. And that's number one. You have a 45 days. If you do it on the 46th day, I am sorry, the 1031 is over. And so you want to make sure that you have that within that 45 days. Now, we can talk about a little later how you can identify even before. We'll talk about the rules on that. Now, that's one of the rules. The second rule that's very strict is that you have 180 days to close from the date of closing of the subject property. Not the 45 days later, but again, that day, just like the 45 days. So new construction can be an issue in that particular situation. And so you want to make sure that that happens properly. And so if you have existing property, that's going to be a really good thing for one thing to buy because we know it's ready to go. New property, we're going to deal in a later video about how to do that. Now, how you do this without paying taxes is you've got to take all the money that is your net that goes to an exchanger, and we've got to reinvest all that cash. So if it's $150,000, we can divide it however we want, 50, 50, 50, 50,000, 50,000, 50,000, or we can do it in various portions, and we can do up to 3 properties. That's one of the rules, is the 3-for-1. Now, there's another rule that allows you to buy even more, depending on how big that subject property is. And I've had some pretty expensive properties out of California sold where they needed to buy 7 properties, as long as it does not exceed 200% of the amount that you sold. So you got to do at least what you sold, up to 200% to go to that, or you can do the 3-for-1 rule, and that's another thing that you can do. Now, I mentioned earlier that you can identify even before that 45 days before the subject property closes, and you got to have a seller that's willing to do this. But the situation there is that may give you a little bit of head start. Just one little caveat here about doing this. Do not close on that new property before you close on the subject property that you want to exchange into these, because then it becomes what's called a reverse exchange, which becomes very expensive. Reverse exchanges are done at a much higher cost to you, and I mean a much higher cost. It's done mostly in commercial when we're dealing with millions of dollars, and not on residential where we may be talking $150,000, $200,000, $250,000 a property, something in that range. We do not do a reverse exchange. So understand that these rules are very, very strict. We know these rules. My team has done hundreds of these, and so we know how to adhere to the guidelines. That is something that's very, very important because the tax ramifications are too great for you to miss these deadlines, and we do not want to be responsible for that. We want to err on the side of caution and conservatism to make sure that you come out okay on this.